Hey guys, this is Coach Michael Burt, the Super Coach. I believe everybody needs a coach in life, and you're listening to Success is a Choice podcast.
Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Welcome to Success is a Choice podcast. I'm your host, Jamy Bechler. And what an interesting guest that we have today. Chris Voss spent 24 years in the FBI, and though being an FBI agent might be cool, Chris wasn't just any FBI agent. He was the FBI's lead international kidnapping negotiator. He's been involved in some of the history's biggest international kidnapping cases and has represented the U.S. at numerous international conferences. He's taught and spoken at some of the most prestigious schools in the country, including Georgetown and Harvard. He is the founder and CEO of the Black Swan Group and has now written a great book called Never Split the Difference, Negotiating as if your life depended on it. We're excited that he can join us today. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jamie. An absolute pleasure to be here.
Yeah. I'm sure as a kid, you're running around, you're the best kid in the world, the apple in your parents' eye, never did anything wrong. So did you knew that you're going to be in law enforcement even as a kid?
Does that kid exist? I mean, theoretically in fairy tales and stuff.
Well, I thought that must be you. I thought that must be you to end up being, an FBI agent and go into law enforcement. You had to be a perfect kid, right?
Yeah, just born rational, right? Follow the rules, cleaned up, all that kind of stuff. Again, when you find that kid, you let me know. I want to know how I got that way.
When did you decide that you kind of wanted to go into the area of law enforcement?
When I was a teenager, I saw a movie about two police officers in New York. It was the Super Cops. And I was blown away at how creative and innovative these guys were and how much fun they had doing something that was a really good thing to do. And then, the community that they served loved them. They were in a really tough neighborhood in New York City. Bed-Stuy at the time was really bad, was really tough. And as bad as the neighborhood was, like any neighborhood, there are more good people than bad. I don't care what neighborhood you're talking about. And the good people in the neighborhood loved these guys. And I just loved the combination of all that, the idea of creativity and fun and doing something good and having people appreciate it. So, it blew me away. And from my mid-teens on, I wanted to be in law enforcement.
So what were some of the memorable things or memorable moments or maybe satisfying or even unsatisfying, but they were memorable from your time in the FBI?
Well, we had a practice after we got kidnapped victims out, international kidnappings. We'd often want to meet with them and their families, ostensibly to talk about the process and as much so that we could learn what it was like for them on their side to make us better. But, it was always pretty gratifying to talk to families and people that you've gotten out of the fire, if you will. So we did that on a regular, every couple of years, we'd gather all the victims and their families together in a conference at Quantico and learn from them. And, that was pretty cool stuff. I enjoyed that a lot.
Were there some times that you negotiated with people that afterwards, obviously you're an expert and you're really good at what you do, but just like a basketball player will miss some shots or a team might lose a game, where there's some times when you maybe made a mistake or did something you would have liked to done differently and that ended up helping you later on?
Yeah, well, you bring up a good point. I mean, there's no such thing as perfection. You should always strive to get better, but perfection is an impossibility, and it's just designed to make you unhappy. So, yeah, you make mistakes or you do the best you know how and things don't work out. I mean, one of the things I talk about in the book, a real turning point for us was, we're working at kidnapping in the Philippines and the Burnham-Sabero case, and we did everything that we knew how to do. And we thought we were going to get the victims out, and it ended up, they didn't come out when we thought they were going to come out. And then there was a botched rescue attempt, an accidental rescue attempt. Philippine Scout Rangers came upon a camp that the remaining hostages were in, didn't even know. They knew it was the bad guys. They knew it was a terrorist camp. They recognized it right away. They didn't know that there were any hostages there. And they just opened fire. And 2 out of 3 of our last remaining hostages were killed. And it was hard. We did everything we knew how to do, and it wasn't enough. And there was a lot of soul searching that went on there. And it was one of those moments where either you quit and you find something else to do, or you stay in and you get better. And I stayed in. My colleagues, we stayed in. We got better, and lives were saved on down the line because of the people that got killed. Because Martin Burnham got killed, and the anniversary of his death is actually coming up later this month. But it was a punch in the gut for us, which is a little selfish to say, because imagine what it was like for the family to lose the dad, to lose the loved one. So we didn't incur the actual loss, but it was hard, and we had to get better, and we did.
Well, we all watch movies, and there's always a hostage negotiator in some of these action movies, or the hostage situation. And sometimes they're going off like a Wild Wild West cowboy, and throwing the book and going away from the book, throwing caution to the wind. How much of that is real? Do you stick primarily to the book, so to speak, or is there some gut involved in the negotiating that you were doing?
No, dramatization. Hollywood really slaughters that. What Hollywood does. I mean, you don't throw the book out. You don't go off on your own and do stuff that everybody else disagrees with. That's absolute nonsense. The closest thing to a good movie on hostage negotiation really is The Negotiator with Kevin Spacey and Samuel Jackson. We used to use clips from that movie in training. So, but I will tell you the biggest thing that they did wrong in that. There's a scene where Kevin Spacey says, he's in a command post. He says, from now on, all decisions go through me. And that is one fundamental flaw. Negotiators don't command, commanders don't negotiate. So if a negotiator ever said, all decisions go through me, the next thing he knows, he would be in a car on his way home. He would have been relieved and kicked out. Other than that, I mean, negotiation is a great team game. The best negotiators play in a strong team. And when we negotiate in business now, I always like to have a wingman in my negotiations, because it could be, you should at least have one of those set of ears listening along with you.
What can we do? Our listeners are educators, coaches, leaders, business people. I'm not sure we have any FBI agents. We may have a few people in law enforcement. So what can most of us normal people, so to speak, or people that aren't negotiating for in life and death situations, what are some of the ways that we can use negotiation skills daily?
If you, first of all, you practice them daily and get really good at them. If you just, there's one skill, one of our FBI 8 hostage negotiation skills that are negotiation 9 for business. You just get good at paraphrasing people. You can practice that on a regular basis. Practice it in your small stakes conversations, the conversations where you don't have any skin in the game. Small stakes practice makes for high stakes results. Whatever sport you're in, the first game you played wasn't the championship game. You had practice. You had warm-ups. You had all sorts of repetitions to get that way. Let the other person talk first and paraphrase what they said before you go on. In your regular conversations, you're going to find people love that, and it's a best practice. And then actually, you're going to find yourself getting your way an awful lot just by paraphrasing what the other person has said. You kind of be shocked at how often people will give in after you paraphrase their position. It's kind of amazing.
Are there ways that we can negotiate in our daily lives to maybe get some better deals at companies or stores or services that we might inquire about, that we might be able to use some of those skills at?
Yeah, everything. I mean, my director of operations is my son, Brandon Voss. He does this even more than I do. Every 3 months he calls all his utility companies, his phone company, his cable provider, and just gets them on the phone and just, is super nice. Now, these people are kind of sitting ducks in a lot of ways, because the person you call at the phone company, wherever, they get beat up all day. So the first person who calls in and is nice is a breath of fresh air. And so if your goal is just to make that person smile a little happier that day, and you're like, all right, I'm paying my bill. If I don't call, my bill doesn't change. So I could live with that. The only thing I want to do is I want to make this person feel good. There's a flip side saying. The first saying is never be mean to someone who could hurt you by doing nothing. That's why those customer service people hurt you by doing nothing. You call in, you're mad, you're demanding, you call names, you're mean to them. And they go, hey, sorry, you got the best rate we have. The flip side is everybody you interact with could help you if they felt like it. If they could hurt you by doing nothing, there's probably something. If they felt like it, there's something there they could do to help you. So you call a customer service person up and you go, you know what? You got the toughest job in your company. You get people call you on the phone. They yell at you every day. You have to be the hardest working person in your entire company. They just don't appreciate you. And you'll feel their mood lighten up. I mean, I called an airline person one time and I started in on this, and a person just started laughing because they've been getting beat up all day. And then you kind of go silent and you say, is there anything I'm missing here? Are there any secret deals that I don't know about? You say it with a smile on your voice. If they got something, if they got anything, they'll give it to you. And if they don't, number one, you're no worse off. And number two, the world's a little bit better place because you called somebody on the phone that's been getting beat up all day and you made them feel a little bit better. So there's no real downside overall to doing that.
I heard you on a interview once before talking about home repairs, maybe kitchen cabinets, things like that. Are those some things that we could look at negotiating with others?
Yeah. First of all, the most dangerous negotiation is the one you don't know you're in. Like any time the words "I want" are in your brain and there's another human being around, you're in a negotiation. Money is not always involved. So kitchen cabinets, you want your kitchen cabinets worked on. What are the issues? The issues for the contractor is if he doesn't like you, he's not going to enjoy being there, so he's going to quote you a high price. A lot of them do that. They think, I just don't like this person. So if I got to go in here, I'm going to charge them the annoyance premium. So if you're nice to begin with, you start establishing that you're going to be somebody they're going to enjoy doing business with. You're going to be appreciative. You're going to like, I can't wait to show these, after you get these awesome cabinets in my house, I cannot wait to tell people about the great job that you did here. I'm so looking forward to having these cabinets. Now you're starting to build up in their head the referral business. And that's what really drives everybody's business is referrals. New customers are much more expensive than existing customers. And that's where referrals come from. So you start saying like, I am so looking forward to having the most gorgeous kitchen cabinets. I'm going to brag as soon as I get this done. I'm going to show these off to my neighbors. So now you get the guy leaning in your direction a little bit. They throw a price out at you. And then, the ultimate way to say no to anybody in all negotiations, after you've established the rapport, after you've established that you're a decent person to deal with, is then just say, wow, that's a great price. That I'd be lucky to get those for that. But I just can't do it. How am I supposed to do that? You say it in a really nice way. You say it like you're genuine, like you want help. Not like you're making an accusation. You say, how am I supposed to do that? Is a way of asking for help. And another way of saying, how am I supposed to do that? Is a tone of voice that says, you're an idiot and I don't like you. And you'd be shocked at how many people will start cutting their price happily in that moment by asking that question and asking it in a nice way.
You mentioned tone of voice there. What are some other things that we probably should do or avoid when we're negotiating something with anyone, whether it's negotiating a raise with our boss or kitchen cabinets or negotiating with our spouse or our kids? Is there something other than tone of voice we should be avoiding?
The biggest thing really is the master negotiators master tone of voice. Another guy that's in my company, Derek Gaunt, who is a phenomenal coach. He was a hostage negotiator in the D.C. metro area. At one point in time, was probably the most influential and important negotiator in the entire region, which includes the nation's capital. So that's saying a lot. And Derek used to say, I put a negotiator on the phone. If they got a great tone of voice, they don't have to say anything right. If they got a great tone of voice, we'll be okay. Because what's going on in the forefront of your brain is always communicated your tone of voice. And if you tee up in the forefront of your brain, I really like you. I mean, I want to cooperate, and anything we disagree on is probably just because I don't understand, and I want to learn what I don't understand. And that comes out in your tone of voice. You could say, how's that going to work? Or what do you expect me to do? And your tone of voice is saying, I don't like you and I think you're stupid. But if you teed up in your head, like, I really want to learn, I really want to know what's going on, you could say, how's that going to work? What do you want me to do? The upward inflection, the genuine curiosity tone is how the most effective negotiators operate. If you're a fan of The Wolf of Wall Street, it's a great movie about, salespeople. Leonardo DiCaprio does a great job of playing this likable bad guy. Jordan Belfort, he still owes old people and retired people over $100 million. You can make up your mind what kind of a person still owes $100 million to retired people who were giving them their pensions. You make up your mind over what kind of person that was. But DiCaprio does a great job of having this likable guy who has this great tone of voice, who gets away literally with financial murder, but the tone of voice was a master skill. So, don't be committing financial murder, but learn from that tone of voice. And that likable tone of voice is insanely effective. Use your powers for good and not evil. But understand what makes people effective.
We'll get right back to this great conversation with Chris Voss in a moment. Chris has written a great book called Never Split the Difference. And our friends at Audible are offering our listeners a free audiobook download and trial membership through the website audibletrial.com/success is a choice. Once you're at that page, just put Chris Voss in the search box and you can download one of his books for free. Once again, that address is audibletrial.com/success is a choice. And now back to our conversation with Chris Voss. You like to talk a lot about empathy versus sympathy. How do the differences of those things come into play?
Yeah, I first learned the difference when I was volunteered on a suicide hotline way back when. And they drew a real clear distinction. Empathy is powerful, effective, establishes relationships. Sympathy is counterproductive. And then the metaphor they used to use for us is they say, if somebody's in quicksand, you do them no good getting into the quicksand with them. And that's the difference between sympathy and empathy. I mean, if I got a problem, it's okay with me if you sympathize, but you're not doing me any good if you sympathize. What I need is clear-headed guidance. I need to get my head clear again. And if you try to go like, oh, I'm so sorry, I know how you feel. Now, that's really well-intentioned, but it's just utterly useless. And if we don't know, well-intentioned sympathy does no one any good. It's just so bad. It's an attempt at common ground. There's a lot of, one of my favorite examples, you had a guy that we got out of Baghdad, Roy Hallams. He was kidnapped and almost killed by Al Qaeda. I mean, it was the grace of God. It was a lot of good negotiation work, a lot of good work by the military in rescuing Roy, but clearly the grace of God as well. And Roy gets out and he's back and he's in Memphis, Tennessee, and he's telling me this story. He's being introduced to these guys and they say, hey, this is Roy. He just got out of Iraq. He was kidnapped by Al Qaeda for well over a year. And one of the people that met him, this guy says, I was once in jail for a weekend. That's an attempt at sympathy. And when you stand back and you hear that, you go like, are you kidding me? I know what you're trying to help here. You're trying to relay, you're trying to have common ground, you're trying to be sympathetic. But that's just so absurdly useless. So sympathy, just because your intention is good does not mean that what you're doing is actually going to help. And that's kind of what sympathy is. It doesn't do anybody any good.
I was once in jail once. It's like talking to a professional athlete. I played football in junior high.
Yeah, exactly right.
We've all been at a get-together or a party or something where we're around somebody who thinks they're the smartest person in the room. I want to know how I can actually be the smartest person in the room and not just act like it. Is there a way to do that?
Man, you start reading people's emotions and instantly, bang, you are going to seem like the mind-reading, most appreciative, most insightful. You know, there's an old saying, interesting people are interested. And you want to be the most interesting, smartest guy in the room. You start dialing into people in a way where they feel you're just genuinely interested, but you're seeing their emotions. You're going to be the only person in the room that does that. I was in a conversation when I was in a New York office with an FBI agent one day. We're walking down the street, and I was just reacting to her emotions. And she says, "You're reading my mind." And I thought to myself, "No, I'm reading your emotions. I might as well be reading your mind as a result." I mean, people feel so attended to that it's ridiculous, and that's how to be the smartest person in the room.
Well, you wrote a great book, Never Split the Difference. Why did you decide to write that book? When did you decide to write the book? What was that process like?
Well, I've been wanting to develop, an entire process, a negotiation approach, strategy, doctrine, if you will, from hostage negotiation. I knew it applied, and I needed to get out of hostage negotiation and get firmly into the business world and run it for a while and prove the concept. Because there was a hostage negotiator came out of the NYPD. As soon as he came out of the PD, he wrote a book, and it was like, here's hostage stuff. Now try it and see what happens. Well, that's not good enough. You need actual examples. So I was lucky enough to teach at Harvard and then to get a steady gig teaching business negotiation. All my university teaching was business negotiation. And I got a steady job as an adjunct at Georgetown University in the MBA program teaching business negotiation. And the great thing about it was in the evening, which meant the students were part-timers. What does that mean? What that means is they're working in the day, they're working professionals, and they're coming to you with, they need help with problems. I got a deal now, right now. Give me some advice. And so we basically coach them through those deals. We get a strategy, get an entire mechanism, and then I'd make them write papers about it and bring the papers back to class. So we had several years of real world application of each and every one of the specific skills, and then not saying to people, see if this works, showing people that it does in every type of negotiation you can imagine, from a negotiation between a husband and wife over a Christmas tree to a negotiation on Wall Street with literally $1 billion transaction. Same skills. So we developed the system A to Z pretty much over about a 3-year period of time. My son was there every step of the way, helping me build it and develop it. He'd been watching me negotiate as a hostage negotiator since he was 2, picked up a bunch of the skills himself. And then we found this phenomenal book, business book writer, Tal Raz, an absolute genius writer. And we put out a book that we think pretty much encompasses, how to be insanely effective in business using hostage negotiation skills.
This book, though, probably anyone could read this. I mean, obviously anyone could read that knows how to read, but anybody, not just business people, but I'm sure anyone that leads other people or interacts with other people, which is just about everybody.
Yeah, we've been really happy. It's been cited as a leadership book. It's been cited as a sales book. This year, because of the book, they named me 100 top leadership thinkers for 2018. Which, was, I'm flattered by that. I'm honored by it. This book, as you said, has application to wherever there's human communication, you need collaboration. And leadership is one of those things.
Yeah, because I think about, just your daily life, you're going to have tens upon tens upon tens or hundreds of decisions or interactions with people where you want something you want, they want something that they want, and you've got to either find common ground or you've got to find a solution or something. You're negotiating with people or interacting with people all day long.
Yeah, exactly. And, the vast majority of times, not a small majority, the vast majority of times, if someone feels heard out, that's really all they need. Everybody can think of the boss who never did what what you wanted the boss to do, but they always heard you out. And then afterwards you felt like, all right, I've been respected, I've been appreciated, I could change my mind. And the number of times that you will get the collaboration, you will get the deal, when people feel heard out, is such a high percentage, and it's such an effective and cheap things to do because it also accelerates the process. I mean, once feeling heard out, they'll collaborate 75 to 85% of the time. Those are good percentages. And it takes less time to hear somebody out than it does to try to argue them into a corner and take them hostage, in which case you're going to have tons of implementation, cooperation, collaboration problems from that moment on because they feel resentful anyway. So it's actually one of my students at Georgetown did a study, and her conclusion was empathy saved time.
Hmm. Well, Stephen Covey, I love the quote.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, most people listen with the intent to reply instead of the intent to understand.
Covey would have been a great hostage negotiator. He's got a lot of stuff in there about listening and understanding that are just absolutely right on. And that's one of those things. And when you listen, you know, the other one, seek first to understand, then be understood. Pretend that Covey was a mercenary, which he wasn't. But if your overwhelming goal is to be understood, if you make the other side feel that you've understood them, their ears open up. And then you're in a position to get your way.
Well, we even, when I went through debate and argumentation and communication classes in college, you know, one of the first things they taught you was you have to know the other person's argument. You have to understand where they're coming from, or you'll never have a chance to either convince them or convince a neutral person of your side.
Yeah, very true. And that's where you got to go first. You know, demonstrate understanding, and floodgates open up after that.
Well, you formed your own company, consulting business, Black Swan Group. What are some of the things you're doing with that? And I know you have a newsletter or something that our people can subscribe to or check you out. So what are some great things you're doing with that company right now?
Well, you know, we're coaching, teaching, training everybody and everything. I mean, if you don't have a lot of money for training materials, or you're just trying to get started, you know, the newsletter, that's the first place to start. Besides buying a book. I mean, a book is, you know, the book's $20, you know, on Amazon or less. I mean, you're going to pay for the book within the first day that you've read the first 5 pages. But then after that, if you subscribe to the newsletter, The Edge, a real simple way to do that is, and it's complimentary, it doesn't cost anything. Text the word, all one word, FBI empathy. Don't let your spell check autocorrect and put a space in there. It's got to be FBI empathy with no space breaking it up. Text that to 22828. That number is 22828. FBI empathy. You'll get a reply back to subscribe to our free newsletter. It comes out once a week, Tuesday mornings. It's a short, digestible, easy to read, practical, applicable advice on negotiation you could use that day. And the newsletter is a gateway to the website. We talk about training. We talk about other sorts of stuff you could get online to make yourself a better negotiator. And you can start right away. And the newsletter is really, really the gateway to everything.
That's awesome. Good newsletter. Where else can people connect with you?
Well, you know, we got a Facebook page, it's Black Swan Ltd. I'm on Instagram as the FBI Negotiator, on Twitter at Voss Negotiation. And we put resources, we put articles on LinkedIn on a regular basis. So whatever your social media preference is, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you know, we're putting material out there that you could use. And we'd love to give you as much as we possibly can. And a lot of it is free, which is a pretty good price.
That's awesome. We'll be sure to put those in the show notes. I'm sure people will be very interested in checking out what you're doing and connecting with the guy that was 100% inspiration for Kevin Spacey. Best friends, in fact, with Kevin Spacey in The Negotiator.
Hey, and the trouble he's gotten into lately, you know, I don't know, you know.
That's true. That's that's a little black mark, big black mark on his resume. Chris, really appreciate your time. It's been a great conversation and dropped a lot of nuggets of insight that all of our listeners can benefit from. So I really appreciate it.
Jamy, this was cool. I'm happy to be on. Thanks for having me on as a guest.
Chris Voss is a straight shooter that has some great stories. That was a fun conversation, and it's not every day that you get to talk to the best in the world at something. He was as good as it gets when it comes to FBI negotiations. Check out the show notes to get his book and to get subscribed to his weekly newsletter. His tips and strategies can help you in your everyday life. Also, it'd be awesome if you could go and give us a little 5-star review on iTunes, as this will help others find this episode and keep this podcast free for you, the listeners. Thanks so much, and remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today?